Ash Sarkar, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This is a bit uncomfortable, or is this all right on a haystack?
I mean, look, for me, I'm just like, I feel like Marie Antoinette in Versailles pretending to be a milkmaid, you know? Like, this is great.
This is how we roll at TWT.
This is how we do it.
So how's it going? Are you enjoying it?
You know what? This is, I think, the most exciting TWT that I've ever been to. And the reason why that is because, one, we are around the corner from a general election. So the idea of taking power seems so very close. And then the second thing is that the policy agenda this year is more radical and more exciting than it's ever been. So TWT often gets mischaracterized as a bit of a cheerleader fest. It's not. This is the movement holding the leadership's feet to the fire on issues like a Green New Deal, so setting the date for zero carbon at 2030, which is miles ahead of where, you know, the Liberal Democrats are, for instance. Thinking about issues like a 4-day week, universal basic services, also, you know, abolishing private schools, so taking on the engines of class-free production head-on. I don't remember a time where the left was like this. Before, the left was very single issue. Things didn't seem that joined up. Whereas to have those issues married up with counterculture is so exciting.
So that would be the policy agenda then. The Green New Deal's net zero by 2030, which is paramount if we want to take global justice into consideration, so that the global south countries can reach zero
also,
by 2050.
If it was Labour policy, and if Labour won a general election, it would mean that it had the most radical climate policy outside of those island states who are feeling the effects of climate change right now. So it would truly be groundbreaking. You know, often we sort of say like, oh well, you know, Germany does this, or Scandinavia does that, whereas this would be the Labour Party breaking new ground.
Amazing. As you said, general election round the corner. What can the progressive movement do to make sure there's a win?
Okay, so one is that the Tories are hoping that the general election will just be a second referendum on Brexit. The thing is that they tried that one before in 2017. Obviously, a lot has changed in that time, or more precisely, hasn't changed in that time. So maybe Brexit creeps up in salience for the electorate. But what happened last time is that domestic policy issues sort of came around from behind and walloped the Tories around the back of the head, and they didn't know what to do with it. They're trying to cope with it by making spending pledges, rah. And so that means that the left has got to hold where it is on austerity and then go into new territory, because austerity doesn't explain all inequality. It doesn't explain the fact that society is organised in a way so that people who live off wealth are exploiting the labour of those who live off work. Fundamentally, that's the issue. And so I think if the Labour Party finds a way to tell that story in a way which is populist, which is direct, which isn't sort of policy wonky, and then backs it up with the radical policies, could be in with a fighting chance.
Do you reckon they need to be stronger on sort of taking on the corporations and like really saying, coming after you?
Absolutely, and not just the corporations, but I think a few symbolic issues would be great. One, ban private jets. Make them defend the existence of private jets. Again, ban private schools, but also universalising services. So using the NHS as a model for so much more. They've already talked about doing that with education. I would like to see it with elderly care, social care. So all those things which really address people's anxieties about poverty, about ageing, about inequality, about services that they're going to rely on, is start with a proposition which is this will be universal, it will be free at the point of use, it's going to be like education, it's going to be like the NHS, and have that as a model for state provision across the board.
You've mentioned the word populist a couple of times, left populism. What do you think a left populism should look like then? What kinds of messages do you think?
Class war plus banter. That's what I think.
You're good at that.
I mean, the thing is like quite genuinely that, you know, obviously populism isn't always in the hands of the left, and left populism isn't always progressive, especially when it takes on an economic agenda but doesn't confront institutional racism.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't want a left nationalist agenda, would you?
No, absolutely not.
The way forward.
For me, when I talk about populism, I talk about agency, and empowering people to exercise democratic control of every aspect of their lives. So not just once every 5 years the ballot box, but thinking about how do you extend the notion of democracy to the workplace, the notion of democracy to the economy, to the social agenda.
Open Democracy is hosting a panel and I'm chairing it, and it's about left coalitions. Should Labour into a left coalition or not, or Progressive Alliance, whatever you want. Do you have a stance on that?
So I think it's obviously important to plan for it. I think, it might be the case that you've got to have a coalition with the SNP, perhaps even with the Lib Dems. The price that they will put on it is Corbyn steps down. And if Corbyn steps down, it's not going to be the left get to stay as they are. What will happen subsequently are purges of the left, like you saw in the Kinnock era and under Blair as well. That's what's going to happen with the Labour Party. Corbyn isn't flawless. He's not perfect. I count my politics to the left of him, and I think they need to be much more radical on lots of issues. But I realise that the reason why he's being attacked in the way that he is because he's a totem for a kind of political empowerment which is fundamentally antithetical to the vested interests of the establishment, liberal, social democratic left.
Would the progressive movement want to make that kind of compromise or not?
Well, I think you've got to say to the Lib Dems, we're going to play hardball. So, no. Maybe even beat them to the post, go, we'll go into coalition with you and you can have government positions, but get rid of Joe Swinson. Just for banter.
Like it.
Just do it.
Okay, last question. What is your one key take-home message for the Labour leadership?
My one key take-home leadership message would be there is no reason to be timid. There is no reason to be timid whatsoever. So if you're doing a Green New Deal, go for net zero by 2030, not 2035, not 2040, not 2045, 2030. When you're looking at policies around immigration, don't just say, okay, we're going to get rid of the hostile environment, oh, we might get rid of detention centres. Go for unconditional family reunion. Get rid of no recourse to public funds. Do things which will fundamentally transform what the Home Office is for. Because I can cope with a Labour Party which loses because it stood on its principles. The history of the Labour Party in recent years, particularly in 2015, is that it lost because it didn't stick to its principles.
Brilliant. Ash Sarkar, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, that was amazing.
I did some real chin.